Chapter 41, The Third Soul Skill. Please collect, recommend, and invest. By the next morning, a soft blue halo still clung to his body. 3 soul rings rose behind Lin Chuan in sequence, 1 yellow, 2 purple, swaying and glowing to mark the successful absorption. Shui Lanqin and Leng Man, who had been on edge all night, finally relaxed. They had chased off more than a few spirit beasts during the process and were exhausted, but it had paid off. The 2 women exchanged relieved smiles. Lin Chuan opened his eyes and a sharp light flashed across them. Shui Lanqin stepped forward with a bright grin. "Congratulations, Xiaochuan, you did it again," she said, then hurriedly asked, "How is it?" A 2-headed wind demon wolf is a mutated spirit beast. Its soul skill should be exceptional, right? Lin Chuan nodded. "It's not bad. My soul power reached level 33. As for the soul skill..." He waved his hand and a short black bow appeared in his palm. Without a physical arrow, he drew the string. The dark purple soul ring pulsed, and by the power of wind, an arrow formed out of thin air. Third soul skill, Swift Wind Arrow Rain. There was no sound. Shui Lanqin only saw a flash of white before her eyes as the arrows shot out. 5 identical shafts suddenly split in midair and slammed into a large tree. The trunk exploded with a thunderous crack, wood splinters spraying everywhere. "This is my third soul skill, Wind and Arrow Storm," Lin Chuan explained. "It fires an arrow made of wind power that splits after being shot. When the arrows strike, they release tiny wind blades that cut everything in a small radius. Each extra soul ring causes further splitting. The skill is completely silent, and its firing speed surpasses explosive and ice arrows. Ordinary soul masters would find it hard to dodge, perfect for a stealth attack." "That really is the mark of a mutated soul beast," Shui Lanqin said, impressed. "Powerful, and the silence and speed make it hard to defend against. In a team fight, you'd be the sharpest attacker." She was increasingly proud of Lin Chuan, not only talented, but astonishingly lucky. Most people never even encountered mutated spirit beasts at all. Sometimes she wondered whether he was the child of a god. Lin Chuan bowed slightly in thanks to both Shui Lanqin and Leng Man. "Come on, this isn't the place to linger," Leng Man said, hiding the faint smile tugging at her lips. "We got the third soul ring. Let's head back to the academy." They moved toward the edge of the sunset forest, but sudden roars echoed nearby. Several auras flared up in Lin Chuan's senses. The strongest was still weaker than Leng Man's. "Someone's hunting a spirit beast," Shui Lanqin said. "Better not get involved. We don't want any unnecessary trouble." They peered through the trees and saw a group in the clearing. The uniforms were unmistakable. "Tiando Royal Academy?" Lin Chuan murmured. He'd spent time in Tiando City and recognized the outfit at once. 8 people stood there. 1 adult man in his 30s watched from the side. The other 7, boys and girls around the same age, were circling and pressuring a spirit beast. Shui Lanqin squinted and, catching sight of their bright soul rings, commented, "Those kids must be the Tiando Academy team. They'll probably be our opponents in the upcoming Continental Elite Academy competition." Lin Chuan only half listened. His gaze had been caught by a girl with short, dark purple hair. Purple hair was rare on Douluo Continent. It stood out. More importantly, the girl's family name struck him, Dugu. Her grandfather had to be Dugu Bo, the famed poison Douluo. Dugu Bo's medicinal garden, the Ice and Fire Herb Garden, was inside the Sunset Forest, full of rare fairy grasses. Lin Chuan had long coveted those herbs, though he knew they wouldn't be easy to obtain. "Dean," he asked once they were out of sight, "when we get back, could you help me find books on medicine and poisons?" Shui Lanqin raised an eyebrow. "What do you want those for?" "I want to study," Lin Chuan said simply. "I'll manage my time. It won't affect my practice." Leng Man watched him calmly. Shui Lanqin's curiosity softened into a nod. "The academy library has plenty. I'll ask the Shui family to help gather anything rare." "Thank you," Lin Chuan said earnestly. "Don't be so formal, little one," Shui Lanqin replied. "If you train hard, that's thanks enough. Connections could be useful. They saved time and got you access to resources you couldn't reach alone. But in the end, strength mattered most." Lin Chuan knew he'd need to be stronger before he could approach Dugubo for herbs or make any other delicate arrangements. The trio left the Sunset Forest without drawing attention and returned to Tianshui College. After parting ways with Shui Lanqin and Leng Man, Lin Chuan went to the academy library. He gathered books on medical techniques, poisons, and various herbs, then settled at an empty corner table and opened the first volume. All right, he muttered to himself, learn the detox methods well enough to deal with Dugubo's toxins before I turn 12. He immersed himself in study. You have carefully read books on poison techniques and gained a little. Poison technique proficiency +1. Study complete. Chapter 42. 4 years, Feishuang Mountain, Library, Wooden House. For the past 4 years, Lin Chuan had fallen into a steady rhythm, 3 points of duty, 1 line of practice, and the rest of his days pleasantly full. After breaking through to the 30th level and ascending to Soul Master, he discovered he could now refine spirit refining rice perfectly, 100%. No matter how dense the energy in a rice grain, he could absorb and temper it completely through meditation. That was a comfort, but it didn't speed his cultivation as much as he'd hoped. The higher one rose in soul rank, the longer each step took. Even with the rice's help, progress remained slow. Still, it was exhilarating to feel himself grow stronger, little by little. Time passed in a blink. 4 years later, Lin Chuan stood at the edge of the training pool, hatchet in hand, watching the graceful figure before him. A blade of chill air split the world and struck from nowhere. Lin Chuan's body flashed aside, closing the distance. He struck with the hatchet. The metal sang. Lengman's expression tightened, and she dodged, but the edge still whistled close. The hatchet didn't find flesh. It struck the layer of ice crystal armor that clung to her like a second skin. Crack! Lin Chuan felt the blow rebound. He raised the hatchet and shook it. The power in the weapon surged, and a spiderweb of cracks spidered across the ice armor as if it might shatter. Lengman snorted softly, lifted a palm, and shoved it into Lin Chuan's chest. Lin Chuan moved with practiced reflex, letting his body skills flow to the limits. The hatchet's shadow roared. Lin Chuan felt as if his arms and the hatchet were one, every move obeying his will. He could even feel the gust the blade made as it flew. Clang! The hatchet tapped Lengman's palm, vibrated, and then twisted. The overwhelming soul technique of a soul saint was dissipated in an instant. Lengman's eyes widened. Although they had sparred countless times, she still could not fully understand this inexplicable source of power. Without pausing, Lin Chuan drove the blade forward. Lengman barely had time to react. Her purple soul ring flashed and a spray of frost burst outward from her like the eye of a hurricane. The force slammed into him and pushed him back. The 5th soul skill, Ice and Snow Meteor, she intoned. As Lin Chuan fought to regain his footing, the black soul ring behind Lengman bloomed. A giant ball of bluish ice condensed and hurtled at him. A soul ring forged over 10,000 years, its presence chilling the air even from a distance. Lin Chuan's eyes flared, his soul power surged. He drew on his sword technique as if drawing a line through space. Cut! A blade of pure light split from him, the movement invoking a sense of heaven and earth aligning. The sword light collided with the ice blue sphere, and a terrifying vortex of energy formed. The training pool's surface buckled, waves rolled, and the water began to boil with motion. Boom! The lake exploded outward. Columns of water shot skyward, and rain began to pour down. Lin Chuan planted his feet amid the rushing spray and let the lake water strike him. Director Leng, let's stop here for today, he called, laughing as he slid the hatchet back into his soul storage. Lengman drew a slow breath and nodded, shock plain in her eyes. You little monster, you've grown stronger again. You blocked my 5th soul skill without using your martial spirit. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. Lin Chuan grinned. Director Leng flatters me. I'm still nowhere near the level of you or Dean Shui. Lengman's lips twitched into something like a smile. I'm a 76th level soul saint, but you're still only a lower-ranked soul master, and you forced me to use my 5th soul skill. We barely came out even. That's already terrifying. It's a pity that non-martial weapons aren't allowed in the continent-wide Soul Master Elite competitions. Otherwise, she trailed off, a flicker of regret in her gaze. Lin Chuan returned the smile with quiet confidence. Doesn't matter. If you won't let me use my weapons, then I won't let you use yours. A bow is enough. That's right, 2 years until the next Advanced Soul Master Academy Elite competition. With your current strength, you'll have very few rivals. With your soul skills, it might be even harder for others to match you. The mention of the contest brightened Leng Man's expression. Tianshui College really might shine this time. Lin Chuan chuckled without answering. He felt certain. The Advanced Soulmaster Academy competition had been held 3 years earlier when he was still a child. The Tiando Empire organized it, but Dean Shui had focused on the next contest, and Tianshui hadn't sent its best team then. In hindsight, that decision had been smart. In 2 years, Lin Chuan might reach even higher. Perhaps Soul King, perhaps Soul Emperor. By then, since training's done for today, I'll go push the others to practice harder. They won't catch up to you overnight, but they shouldn't fall too far behind, Leng Man said before turning away. Left alone, Lin Chuan laughed out loud. Finally, man in heaven has won. Those 4 years of relentless effort had paid off. The 7 members of the team no longer presented him with much pressure. When he asked to spar with Shui Lanxin, the dean passed him to Leng Man. The Soul Saint had lived up to her reputation. Her mere presence tested Lin Chuan. Yet under that pressure, his swordplay and body skills had advanced enormously. Now he had achieved a breakthrough, the state of unity between man and nature. What did that mean? It was the merging of body, mind, and technique, skill aligned with the way. The body became the heart of heaven. Each movement could call on the power of the world. He could sense the nature of the heavens and earth and begin to learn its mysteries. For most soul masters, such a realm might take decades to reach. Lin Chuan had arrived in only a few years through tireless practice. He returned to the wooden house and sat cross-legged by his bed. Just as his swordsmanship reached that state of unity, the long-dormant golden pointer, the system that had silently guided him, stirred at last. The first skill has reached unity between man and nature. Advanced rewards will now be issued. Congratulations, you have obtained Alchemy Art and Ninefold Thunderblade. Chapter 43. Alchemy Technique, 9-Layer Thunderblade. Lin Chuan sat on the edge of his bed, his mind sinking into the depths of the alchemy secret. The book was packed with formulas and painstakingly detailed refining methods, enough that a layman could, in theory, become an alchemist if he followed it closely. The catch, of course, was the equipment and conditions it assumed. Alchemy demanded a medicine cauldron and a reliable refining flame, plus intense concentration and mental stamina throughout the process. Lin Chuan had none of that. He kept reading, hunting for a way around the problem, and found one. Earth fire. A special flame born of the earth itself. By tapping into an earth fire vein and breeding a trace of that fire inside the dantian, one could generate a flame suitable for refining medicine, forging tools, even combat. Earth fire was rare, usually found where volcanic activity had left its mark. If I can't make a proper cauldron or find a normal flame, Lin Chuan thought, this earth fire approach might be the answer. I can't sleep without trying. The conditions were harsh, but not impossible. Douluo Continent was vast. Earth fire veins had to exist somewhere. He wasn't sure about other regions, but there was one place he knew for certain. He had until the continent-wide elite tournament for advanced soul masters to find the resources and build a cauldron. Well, only barely. He was 12 now. Tang San would soon graduate from Notting College and head to Shrek College. If he waited too long, he might miss whatever opportunity there was to obtain the yin-yang eyes of ice and fire. That pushed the timeline forward. Tomorrow, then, he decided. With his plan set, Lin Chuan put alchemy aside for the moment and turned to another secret book he knew well, one attributed to the thunder god of the devouring world. It contained a full system, body techniques called Liu Guang, a guiding technique known as Ju Chong Hun Yuan, Ninefold Chaotic Source, and a sword system, Lei Dao, the 9-Layer Thunderblade. What made the 9-Layer Thunderblade terrifying was its method of force application. Where most people try to use 100% of their strength in a single strike, this technique applied force in layers. Each level intentionally uses only 70% of the practitioner's output, but each layer is superimposed on the previous, multiplying the effective force. The first layer stacked with a second would yield a combined effect far greater than a single, full-strength blow. By the time you reached the 9th layer, the book claimed you could produce the equivalent of 7 times your natural body strength. In short, it was a discipline of controlled, recursive force, brutally effective, but fiendishly difficult to master. Lin Chuan grinned. The Thunder God was a genius. Of course, it was harder to practice than it looked. Superimposing that kind of dark energy cleanly wasn't simple. Even beginning the first level required a thorough command of the 18 basic moves. Fortunately, Lin Chuan had an advantage. Recent breakthroughs had accelerated his progress. He stood, took a hatchet out of his storage soul guide, and began to work through the sword techniques from memory. As he practiced, the system registered his efforts. You practiced the Thunderblade seriously once. Small progress gained. Sword technique proficiency +1. Thunderblade proficiency +1. Maybe it was his imagination, or the effect of having recently broken through the unity of man and nature, but he felt his proficiency creeping upward faster than before. Whether real or not, it was encouraging. He checked his status out of habit. Name, Lin Chuan. Soul power, level 49, 4-ring soul sect. Blessing, heaven rewards hard work. Blue stars will, 1 point hard work, 1 point harvest. Effort yields result. Skills, Tianshui meditation LV5. Progress, archery subtle, gunmanship subtle, swordsmanship, heaven and man are one. Boxing subtle, body skills subtle. Abilities, observation hockey LV3, Thunderblade undergraduated 1000. Soul skills, explosive arrow LV3, ice arrow LV3, ray of wind arrows LV3, thunderbolt arrow LV2. The attribute pane looked cleaner than before. Night had fallen. Starlight and a bright moon turned the courtyard silver. Lin Chuan swung the hatchet again and again at high frequency, pouring his whole body into each motion until he was sweating through his shirt. When exhaustion finally forced him to stop, he felt the change he'd hoped for. The speed of proficiency gain had indeed improved. I can't stop yet, he told himself. This is the best time to meditate. I'll try the guiding technique while I'm at it. Maybe it'll speed things up. He sat down on the cold ground and entered a meditative state. Instantly, the surrounding heaven and earth energy flowed toward him. Muscles sore from practice suddenly cooled and settled, like being placed into an ice cave. You meditated once and gained a little. Soul power slightly increased, physique slightly strengthened. Tianshui meditation proficiency +1. Guiding technique, 9-fold chaotic source proficiency +1. Lin Chuan blinked. The degree to which he absorbed heaven and earth energy had clearly improved. But even more surprising, the 9-fold chaotic source had allowed a portion of that energy to integrate into his body, strengthening it from within. It was a pleasant, unexpected bonus. If I can push the 9-layer Thunderblade to the extreme, he thought, this effect will only get more pronounced. My soul power and my body will advance together. He took a long breath, excitement stirring. The prospects were better than he dared hope. Alchemy provided a way to make the fire he needed, and the 9-fold chaotic source offered a faster, more efficient means of bodily cultivation than blind physical training. With both the alchemy secret and the 9-layer Thunderblade at his disposal, the path forward had suddenly become much clearer. Chapter 44, Volcanoes, Earth Fire Lizards. Please add to favorites, recommend votes, and invest. Early the next morning, Lin Chuan knocked on the door of the wooden house next door. You said you wanted to take leave and go out? Shui Lanshin, who had just woken up, was awake at once. Her face lit with curiosity. Yes, Dean Shui. I have some very important business to attend to. What's the hurry? Shui Lanshin frowned slightly. If it's not urgent, I can ask the family to help. Lin Chuan shook his head. No one else can handle this. It has to be me. Is that so? Shui Lanshin's curiosity deepened, but she didn't press. Of course you can take leave. How long will you be gone? I'm not sure, Lin Chuan admitted. But don't worry, Dean Shui, I will definitely be back before the All-Continent Advanced Soul Master Academy Elite Competition. Then let me come with you, she suggested. Lin Chuan smiled and gently refused. That's not necessary. With my current strength, I can keep a low profile and protect myself. All right, just be careful. Shui Lanshin sighed. Please tell Director Leng and Senior Sister Binger for me. I will. Lin Chuan left the message and walked out alone. Watching his retreating back, Shui Lanshin murmured, I don't know what this little guy is planning. I hope he's safe. After buying a horse, Lin Chuan rode out the south gate of Tianshui City and headed due south. The Tiando Empire is mostly flat plains, crisscrossed by a dense network of roads and secondary paths. The official roads allowed for fast travel. He was aiming to visit his old village first. Since leaving Kaomiao village, he had never returned. Now that the chance presented itself, he wanted to see it again, if only because it lay along his route. Before he left Tianshui, he had checked the blacksmith shops. None of the local smiths could make the special alchemy cauldron he needed, so he had planned to go to Jiangxin City, the metal capital where the Blacksmith Association was based. Most of the continent's finest smiths gathered there, so he hoped to find someone who could forge what he required. There was another reason for going south. The Xingluo Empire contained countless mountains, many of them volcanic. Lin Chuan wanted to search for an earthfire vein. If he could find one, he might obtain earthfire seeds for his alchemy. Time, however, was tight. The journey went smoothly. He crossed plains and rivers without incident and soon entered Fasno province. When he reached Kaomiao village, little had changed. The villagers were overjoyed to see him, and the village head was especially pleased. He kept saying that the ancestors had blessed Lin Chuan when he learned Lin Chuan had become a soul master and joined a more prestigious academy after graduating. Lin Chuan stayed 3 days and before leaving, left a gift of 100 gold soul coins with the village head. For ordinary villagers, a single gold coin could support months of living. 100 could set many families up for a long time. He wasn't miserly, but he also didn't want to upset fate with too much generosity. He would come back again. Continuing south from Notting City, he crossed the border into the Xingluo Empire and passed through the remote Pajila Kingdom, whose territory was small and sparsely settled. In Pajila City, he bought a map of the Xingluo Empire and located his destination, Longyan Province, at the empire's southwestern edge. Longyan had deserts and plains, but also several mountain ranges. The Drak and Dilong Mountains contained volcanoes rich in mineral deposits, the primary material source for Gangsan City. Lin Chuan did not head straight to Gangsan City. He followed the coastline south instead, heading toward the volcanic ranges. Half a month later, after a stretch of desolate terrain where it was easy to get lost, he finally reached the Drak Mountains. The air grew hotter and sticky. The change in temperature excited him. He felt vindicated. This trip was worth the sleep spent outdoors. Volcanic clusters lay ahead. Even if one volcano lacked an earthfire vein, another might have one. He didn't believe his luck could be that poor. The mountain paths were too rough for a horse, so he released the animal as thanks for carrying him so far, hoping it would survive on its own. He began searching volcanoes one by one. The first 2 turned up nothing, but Lin Chuan kept his spirits up. Natural magical power, like an earthfire vein, is rare, especially on the Douluo Continent. While searching, he practiced whenever he could so he wouldn't waste time. But as he checked more vents with no results, doubt crept in. Had he been unlucky? Had he spoken too soon about finding one? Only one volcano remained. If this last one failed, he would have to rely on the yin-yang eye of ice and fire and leave the rest to chance. He entered through a cave cut into the hillsides and plunged into the mountain's belly. The passages twisted and turned. The air grew noticeably hotter the deeper he went. He pushed forward, following the tunnel that descended toward the heart of the volcano. He didn't know how long he walked before a monstrous roar rolled through the tunnels, echoing from the depths. Lin Chuan froze for a moment, then quickened his pace. At last, he emerged into a hidden valley. The outer ridge he had crossed was only the volcano's shell. The true crater yawned farther ahead, a volcanic cone looming in the valley's center. A deep, muffled booming drifted across the hollow, followed by a cascade of sharp, staccato noises. Lin Chuan's eyes widened. He recognized the sounds and the creatures that made them. This is an earth-fire lizard? Chapter 45, Mutant Earth-Fire Dragon and the Earth-Fire Vein. Earth-fire lizards are fire-attributed soul beasts and extremely social creatures. They usually live in packs of 20 or 30, nestling close to volcanoes where their strong defensive shells and fire affinities serve them best. Legends say that an earth-fire lizard that cultivates for over 10,000 years can evolve into an earth-fire dragon, a fearsome, powerful beast. Seeing the valley packed so densely with them would unsettle anyone with trypophobia. So many of them. It really was no exaggeration, Lin Chuan murmured, frowning. Before he could study the situation further, the lizard suddenly scattered in all directions as though panicked. Amid the chaos, he noticed two massive auras behind the group. In the next instant, the ground split. Two enormous figures lumbered out of a stone cave, each step shaking the earth beneath them. One of the creatures stood upright like a true dragon, at least 10 feet tall, a thick tail dragging behind, a pair of underdeveloped wings along its back, too small to lift its bulk. The other resembled a greatly enlarged, heavily scaled earthfire lizard. Heat warped the air around both of them. The aura of age and power told Lin Chuan they were 10,000-year soul beasts. They roared and collided, fighting with titanic force. The rest of the lizards kept their distance, crawling dozens of feet away with wide, frightened eyes. Lin Chuan stared at the combatants. Both clearly descended from earth-fire lizards, but while one had evolved normally into an earth-fire dragon, the other displayed obvious mutations. He slipped behind a boulder to watch. Even from a distance, their struggle made the ground tremble. If it continued unchecked, could it trigger a volcanic eruption? A soft rustle at his side made him start. An earthfire lizard had crept up and was studying him, cocking its head like an inquisitive child. Lin Chuan reacted instantly, landing a quick blow on the creature's forehead. It didn't have time to cry out before it slumped unconscious. Too close, he thought, wiping sweat from his brow. He'd been distracted watching the giants and almost been discovered. The battle was winding down. The mutant earthfire dragon proved superior. After a brief, brutal clash, it decisively defeated the regular earthfire dragon. The vanquished dragon, battered and unwilling, lowered its head and crawled, groveling in submission. The victor roared into the sky as if declaring dominion. The other lizards dropped to the ground in deference. Spectacular, Lin Chuan thought, but something about the victor's choice of lair didn't sit right. Instead of taking the largest cave, the mutant dragon turned and went into the smallest one. That was odd. If it had just broken through the 10,000-year level and asserted dominance, why claim the smallest cavity? There had to be something important in that little cave. When the giant creatures and the rest of the lizards were driven to the other half of the valley, Lin Chuan moved. He had trained steadily, despite being on the road. His cultivation hadn't stagnated. The ninefold Thunderblade had advanced to its first level, and by channeling its power into his feet, he moved with astonishing speed. The 10,000-year dragon didn't notice him slipping past. Using his keen perceptive sense, he noted the breath in the small cave, stabilized, shallow. The mutant dragon had fallen into a deep, recuperative sleep after its victory. Lin Chuan darted into the cave. As he pressed deeper, the air grew hotter, and the light took on a faint golden shimmer. He followed the warmth and found thin veins of golden flame flickering in cracks along the ground. "Earth-fire vein," he whispered, eyes shining. After searching so long across this volcanic region, he had finally found one. The alchemy secret had described it, a golden-hued earth fire mixed with traces of gold carpeting the edges of magma. Known as golden flame earth fire, it was prized for its intense heat and exceptional qualities, a top-tier earth fire. It looked weaker than the record suggested, perhaps because of differences in this world, but that suited him. A milder vein would be easier to harvest without catastrophic risk. This find alone justified the long journey from Tianshui City in the Tiando Empire to the southwest of the Xingluo Empire. Fortune, he thought, came disguised as misfortune. Collecting a seed from an earthfire vein would take at least a day. He needed to take precautions before beginning. Lin Chuan set his hatchet aside and approached the sleeping mutant dragon. "Ninefold Thunderblade," he intoned. His speed spiked. 4 rapid steps closed the distance, and the hatchet flashed in a cold arc, striking the mutant dragon's skull. The blow cracked the thick scales and splintered bone. The beast woke briefly in pain, but had no time to react before collapsing unconscious again. "An ordinary hatchet maybe wouldn't have done it," Lin Chuan said, examining the weapon. It had been refined once, but clearly he needed more assurance. He summoned his martial soul for redundancy. First, a thunder arrow to aggravate the creature's injuries, a jolt of electric force, then an ice arrow to encase the dragon's head and neck in frost, locking its muscles and slowing its vitality. Satisfied, he clapped his hands once. The mutant dragon was secured. Now, he could begin harvesting the Earthfire vein. Chapter 46. Collecting Earthfire. Please collect, recommend, and invest. Lin Chuan settled into a cross-legged position and prepared himself. According to the method recorded in the alchemy art, when he opened his mouth, a trace of golden flame and earthfire would be drawn into him under the compulsion of his soul power. Inside his body, the flames burst violently at first, then were quickly restrained by the techniques sheathed in the manual. He still didn't know where the alchemy art had originated, but its methods were ingenious, especially the fire control techniques. Collecting the fire proceeded far more smoothly than he had expected. He kept his 6 senses open, letting them hover on the edge of his awareness so he would not be surprised by anything from outside. That caution turned out to be unnecessary. The mutated 10,000-year fire dragon had put every other soul beast on edge. No one dared approach the cave. With the dragon unconscious, the flow of earth fire into Lin Chuan's dantian was uninterrupted. Sparks accumulated, brightening and swelling into a small cluster. Hours slipped by until Lin Chuan finally relaxed his fingers. He formed a few seals and the fire in his dantian flared, spilling out threads of golden light. In the heart of his dantian, a tiny golden flame took shape, suspended there and shimmering with its own inner radiance. "It's done," he said softly, a small smile touching his lips. It hadn't been as difficult as he'd imagined. He thought of the prerequisites for alchemy and felt his spirits lift. At last, he had earthfire. He brought a fingertip to the dantian with a thought, and a wisp of golden flame danced onto his skin, warm but not painful. The ambient temperature rose around it, but Lin Chuan felt no discomfort. This was earthfire, far superior to ordinary flame. Still, the newly formed golden flame was young and weak. It would need time to temper before it could be used for refining elixirs. It was plainly not yet at its peak. "I wonder if earthfire can be used to refine spirit materials," he mused. "Whatever the case, it should be stronger than regular fire. I'll try it once it stabilizes." He drew the remaining earthfire back into his dantian, stood, and looked at the dragon. The mutated 10,000-year fire dragon lay sprawled in a stupor. Half of the ice crystals that had formed on its scales had melted, though some still clung to its hide. The mutation had something to do with its earthfire veins. Its spirit had been altered, increasing the power of its martial spirit. Even without a boost to soul power, the strength of its spirit techniques was terrifying. The ice formed from his previous ice arrow attacks hadn't melted quickly, even amid volcanic heat. Lin Chuan nodded in satisfaction. That explained the dragon's state. "It's time to go," he decided. He channeled the force of the 9-level Thunderblade into his feet and became an afterimage, vanishing from the cave and racing back along the path he had come. The abrupt movement sent the salamanders nearby into a panic. A massive fireball exploded out of the cavern like a meteor, a long flaming tail sweeping behind it. Lin Chuan grinned as he recognized the shape. First soul skill, exploding arrow. He thrust out a fingertip and sent a jet of fire to intercept the oncoming ball. The two conflagrations met and detonated with a thunderous boom. The blast ripped the valley apart. Rocks and creatures were flung away. Many salamanders smashed into the ground or the cliff faces. Smoke and ash filled the air. By the time the 10,000-year fire dragon finally lunged from the cave, Lin Chuan had already disappeared. The beast's roar echoed through the ravine, loud, furious, and utterly impotent. Gengshan City lay within the Star Luo Empire, a stop on Lin Chuan's route back to the Tiando Empire. It was an inland city and one of the empire's main towns, but far from prestigious, ranked in the middle to lower tier. In a world dominated by soul masters, it was not a place that drew much attention. He reached the city at dusk. From a distance, the walls looked iron gray, as if the whole place were forged from metal, and a faint metallic tang hung in the air. Lin Chuan felt a small lift in his mood. "At last," he muttered. "Don't disappoint me." Passing through the gate, he was met with a bustle that was distinctly different from most places. The streets were lined with shops, but the blacksmiths outnumbered everything else. Weapons and armor of every type gleamed on racks and shelves. The clatter of hammer on anvil and the call of vendors created a chorus of commerce. Silver cuirass, finest protection in the city, only for discerning buyers. Fine iron daggers at a bargain. Get one while they last. Treat your equipment like your lover. A shout like the last made Lin Chuan glance and smile. For a moment, he'd thought it was an old acquaintance named Linus shouting in time-worn banter. Clearly, he was wrong. Some blacksmiths, it seemed, were simply devoted to their trade. He skirted the rows of forges and headed for the central district, eyes scanning for what he needed. He soon stopped in front of a tall building with a dark iron plaque above the doors. No words were inscribed. 2 raised images, a hammer and a chisel, were all that marked it. The Blacksmith Association. Thankfully, a chisel and not a sickle, he murmured, and stepped inside. The 3 doors stood open to a constant stream of customers. The first-floor lobby was noisy with trade. Finished wares and common metals were on display, and among them Lin Chuan spotted several medicine cauldrons. He beckoned a staff member over. "Could you bring those cauldrons out? I want to take a closer look." "Certainly, one moment," the attendant replied with a practiced smile and produced several cauldrons in short order. Lin Chuan crouched and examined them carefully. "These won't do," he said finally, standing. The quality or markings were not what he sought. "They're consigned pieces, the ordinary stock we have right now," the staffer explained. "If you want something finer, try the high-end trading area on the 2nd floor or the auction on the 4th. There are far more exquisite works up there." "Very well." Lin Chuan nodded and walked toward the side stairwell. 2 guards blocked the entrance to the upper floors, but when he explained his purpose and produced a soul coin card containing 100,000 gold soul coins, they stepped aside. He climbed to the 2nd floor and entered the upscale trading area. Chapter 47. Return with a full load. The 2nd floor was much quieter than the first. 2 neat rows of shops ran along either side, with a 2-meter-wide aisle down the middle. A quick count suggested there were at least 100 shops. The high-end trading district lived up to its name. The goods here were noticeably better than those on the ground floor. Lin Chuan made a brisk tour and bypassed the raw metal section, heading straight for the finished goods. He stopped in front of a modest shop and peered inside. "What can I do for you, brother?" the shopkeeper asked, his face breaking into a practiced grin. Lin Chuan pointed to a medicine cauldron displayed on a shelf. "Can you show me that cauldron?" "No problem." The old man didn't hesitate. He lifted the cauldron with one hand and set it steadily in front of Lin Chuan. The man wasn't large, but that single effortless motion made it clear he harbored more power than he looked. Lin Chuan took hold of the cauldron's ear and inspected it carefully. After a moment, he let go and kept his expression neutral, though he felt quietly pleased. It wasn't top tier, but it was a very good starter cauldron, durable and more than adequate for a novice alchemist. "How much for it?" "You've got a keen eye. This is the best cauldron in our shop, made by a master blacksmith. 3,000 gold soul coins, and it's yours." The price made Lin Chuan frown briefly. He didn't know much about ironwork pricing, but this seemed fair. The cauldron met his needs and would last a long time. "I'll take it." Very decisive. The old man brightened and began to show off other wares. Lin Chuan was about to refuse when several long knives caught his peripheral vision. One in particular drew him in. Simple, straight, about 3 feet long, no ornate patterns, just a weapon of pure function. "How much is that knife?" he asked, pointing. "You have good taste," the shopkeeper said, practically glowing. "That's nearly the finest blade we have, made by a master smith called Night Shadow, black iron, 3 feet 2 inches overall. The blade 2 feet 5 inches, weighs 81 pounds. It cuts iron like mud, an extremely rare sharp blade." "Come on, just tell me the price," Lin Chuan cut in. 50,000 gold soul coins. "Can I see it?" "Of course." The old man lifted Night Shadow from the rack and handed it over. The handle wasn't heavy in Lin Chuan's hand. A casual swing stirred a gust of wind. Lin Chuan tested it by forming a small hatchet in his left hand, something he could summon with his soul power. "May I try it?" he asked without ceremony. The old man nodded confidently. His store's goods were certified by the association, he said, and he wouldn't take payment for anything fake. Lin Chuan didn't hesitate. He brought the Night Shadow down against the hatchet. With a sharp clang, the hatchet shattered cleanly into 2 pieces, while Night Shadow emerged unmarked. No nicks, no scratches. He pushed soul power into the blade, It shimmered faintly and accepted the energy without resistance. "Impressive," Lin Chuan said. "I'll take it, with a scabbard." "No problem." The old man was delighted. Lin Chuan paid with his soul coin card. He wasn't short on money, and Shui Longxin had even given him a little before he'd left Tianshui College. Buying both the cauldron and the night shadow felt like a bargain in the metal city. After the purchase, he stored the cauldron and the night shadow in his soul storage talisman, checked out of the Blacksmith Association, and found a hotel in Gengshin City. All preparations were in place. The cauldron and the flame were the last things he had to wait on before he could begin official alchemy. He grew restless, waiting for the golden flame to warm. That night, he meditated. Sometime during his practice, a crisp notification sounded in his mind. You meditate seriously. Physical strength slightly increased. Soul power slightly increased. Tianshui meditation proficiency +1. Guiding technique ninefold chaotic source proficiency +1. Lin Chuan opened his eyes with a smile. My soul power has broken through to level 50. Even while he'd been traveling, he'd kept up his cultivation, and the results were satisfying. All he needed now was a soul ring to formally ascend to the Soul King tier. He considered his plans. To obtain his fourth soul skill, he would need to absorb the essence of a 10,000-year soul beast. Those beasts dwelled in the Xingdou Great Forest, and the forest was perilously dangerous. The areas around a 10,000-year beast were often swarming with other predators. If he was interrupted during absorption, things could go very badly. He wasn't arrogant enough to try that alone. He needed someone to help guard him. After thinking it over, the best option was obvious. Return to Tianshui College and ask Shui Longqin for assistance. He might as well also have her help gather medicinal materials. Given his ties to the college, Lin Chuan felt no need for formalities. He packed up, checked out of the hotel, and set off for Tianshui College. The familiar sight of the place brought an odd feeling of coming home. Xiao Chuan, you're finally back. Shui Longqin was waiting at the wooden house when he arrived. Her eyes, mature, composed, and kind, swept over him. Seeing that he was merely dusty and otherwise unharmed, she let out a long sigh of relief. God knew how worried she'd been while he was gone. Is everything settled? She asked. Yes, Lin Chuan replied. Much smoother than I expected, so I returned early. She smiled. So you're not planning to leave the academy again for now? I don't think so, he said. I was lucky. My soul power just broke through. Now I need a soul ring. Chapter 48. Something is wrong. Your soul power has broken through to level 50? Shui Longqin's shock showed in an instant. Then her beautiful eyes brightened. Lin Chuan nodded calmly. Heh, you're really unusual. Shui Longqin drew a breath and couldn't hide a hint of complaint. It was unbelievable. At this rate, the record for the youngest titled Douluo in the Douluo Continent would be broken soon. I'll arrange people right away, she said, recovering her composure. But you only returned today and must be tired from the journey. Why don't you rest at the academy tonight and leave early tomorrow? She suppressed the surprise and framed the suggestion gently. Lin Chuan had no objection and nodded. All right, Xiao Chuan, rest first. I'll organize a soul hunting team and we'll set off at dawn. I promise to help you find a suitable soul ring. As Shui Longqin walked away, Lin Chuan's eyes flickered. Since he had arrived at Tianshui College, Shui Longqin had been extraordinarily kind to him, practically going out of her way to cultivate him. Even as the person benefiting from her efforts, he found her dedication surprising. It was rare to see such generosity toward an outsider. Of course, her actions must have brought pressure from her own family. When he'd spoken with Shuyer before, he had heard the Shui family complain that Shui Longqin was wasting herself. If things went well with this soul-hunting trip, he could repay her. Once he proved useful, she would have the leverage to silence any critics. Lin Chuan smiled at the thought. He took off his travel-worn clothes and dove into the lake to wash away the dust. Back in his small wooden house, he sat cross-legged and continued to warm the golden flame earth fire in his dantian according to the method recorded in the Alchemy Jew. The flame within flickered and grew stronger. Its quality improved subtly. The next morning, Shui Longqin left early for the rendezvous. Standing beside her were two figures. One was Leng Man, the head teacher who already knew Lin Chuan well. The other was a woman with a statuesque, graceful figure, an unusually pretty teacher, though not quite on Shui Lanxin's level. "This is Teacher Qin Shan," Shui Lanxin introduced. "A soul emperor, level 63, with the Narcissus spirit. She's a healing soul master, and she'll be joining us to the Stardew Great Forest." "Hello, Teacher Qin," Lin Chuan said, bowing politely. Qin Shan smiled. "You must be Lin Chuan. Dean Shui and Director Leng have mentioned you. I didn't expect you to be so handsome. Don't worry about treatments. Leave your care to me." "Let's go," Leng Man said, voice cool and brisk. The others nodded. A carriage soon rolled out of Tianshui College. It wasn't ostentatious, but it wasn't shabby either. The horses were Lingfeng horses, hybrids between horse-like soul beasts and ordinary horses. Tamed and bred by humans, they were faster and steadier than normal horses. The carriage itself was built from quality materials for a smooth, stable ride. Inside the carriage, Lin Chuan was surrounded by 3 composed women. A delicate fragrance filled the space. Though Qin Shan was technically the youngest, she was in her 30s, while Shui Lanxin and Leng Man were in their early 40s and still looked far younger than their years, their skin unmarked by time. Lin Chuan sat between them, keenly aware of the different scents and careful not to breathe too deeply. "Xiao Chuan, what did you do after you left the college?" Shui Lanxin's curiosity got the better of her. Leng Man and Qin Shan glanced over as well. "Well, I went back to my village, then to Gengxin City in the Xingluo Empire to buy a few things, and then returned directly," Lin Chuan answered. "That's all?" Shui Lanxin raised a brow, puzzled. "If you needed something special, I could have asked my family to help. Why go all the way alone?" "Thank you, Dean, but some things only I can handle," Lin Chuan said. Leng Man looked him over sharply. "I don't believe you just bought supplies." Lin Chuan tilted an eyebrow, but kept his lips sealed. "Director Leng, you're not wrong, but let me keep it to myself a while longer. The harvest was good, though. I won't disappoint you." Shui Lanxin scolded him lightly, half amused. "You're so secretive, young man. Bad boy." Qin Shan watched the exchange with widening eyes. She had never seen the usually stern dean and head teacher act so unguardedly around a teenager, almost like a pair of doting schoolgirls. The sight was as surprising as it was amusing. She blinked and quickly dismissed the thought as ridiculous. Lin Chuan noticed Qin Shan's odd expression and regarded her with mild curiosity. The healer's face had gone distant for a moment, as if struck by an implausible idea. "Lin Chuan, have you decided which soul beast you want the 5th soul ring from?" Leng Man asked. Without hesitation, Lin Chuan answered, "A light attribute or gold attribute soul beast. Age, about 20,000 years." 20,000 years? Qin Shan blurted, shocked. "That exceeds the usual absorption threshold for level 50, doesn't it?" She knew the situation well. Lin Chuan was exceptionally gifted, and rumors had spread through the college. Shui Lanxin had hinted at his potential before. Qin Shan had assumed a 12 or 13-year-old soul king would already be extraordinary, but targeting a 20,000-year soul ring was outrageous. "Dean?" Qin Shan looked to Shui Lanxin, concern plain on her face. Shui Lanxin answered with quiet assurance. "I know. Xiao Chuan's 4th ring is already 10,000 years old. 20,000 shouldn't be dangerous for him. Please keep this between us," she added softly. "At least don't reveal it before the competition." Qin Shan's lips parted. She could hardly conceal her disbelief that his 4th ring was 10,000 years. It was beyond astonishing. For Tianshui College, however, having such a talent was an immense boon, and as a teacher, she couldn't help but feel hopeful for what it might bring. As the carriage sped toward the Stardew Great Forest, everyone fell into a thoughtful silence. Plans were being made. Expectations were mounting. Something about Lin Chuan's progress felt wrong, improbably right. And everyone on that carriage felt the pull of destiny, whether they admitted it or not. Xingdou Great Forest. A tall, handsome young man in a light blue suit walked through the dense trees, a bamboo hat slung on his back. 3 mature, beautiful women in blue and white robes followed him. They looked to be around 30, cold, composed faces, flawless skin, statuesque figures. Their bearing was proud and aloof. This was Lin Chuan and his party. Time had flown. The boy who had been 12 or 13 when they first met had grown into a man, nearly 1.8 meters tall now. On Douluo Continent, such rapid growth was not unheard of, but it was still impressive. "Stay alert," Shui Lanqin said from the front, her expression serious. "We're approaching the mixed zone of the Stardow Great Forest. 1,000-year and 10,000-year spirit beasts are both here. Keep your eyes on the surroundings." "Lang Man, you're responsible for protecting teacher Qin Shan. Our goal is to avoid fighting if possible. If a spirit beast attacks, withdraw immediately. Don't engage unless you have to." The others nodded. Lin Chuan and Qin Shan walked in the middle. Lang Man brought up the rear. Lin Chuan had already been cautious. The moment they entered the Stardew Great Forest, he had opened his observational ability, alert to everything around them. As long as he didn't engage in combat, using that perception wasn't too burdensome. On the surface, the Xingdou Great Forest contained 100,000-year spirit beasts, but Lin Chuan knew the core areas were infested with far fiercer creatures, some even led by the Silver Dragon King. They rarely showed themselves without reason, but caution was necessary. As they pushed deeper, the aura around them grew more oppressive. Bang, bang, bang! A strange, resonant noise rolled through the trees. The ground trembled faintly. "Someone's fighting ahead!" Shui Lanqin halted, her face hardening. Even from this distance, the ripples of spirit power were exaggerated. This was no ordinary skirmish. "Let's skirt around it. We don't want to be caught in the crossfire." A sensible choice, but Lin Chuan's eyes went narrow. Through his perception, he had already picked up the combat signatures ahead. 3 auras he recognized instantly: Xiao Wu, the Titan Giant Ape, and Tang Hao. No wonder the spirit power fluctuations were so violent. This was a clash involving a titled Douluo. "That means people from Shrek Academy are in the forest," Lin Chuan said quietly. If Tang Hao was here, he wasn't escorting Tang San by chance. Perhaps he'd run into Xiao Wu and tried to take action. Xiao Wu's area of activity could easily overlap with the heart of the forest, where the Titan Giant Ape was dominant. If Xiao Wu had been found, it could be because she wandered out and ran into Tang Hao. "Xiao Chuan, stop spacing out." Shui Lanqin's voice snapped him back. Before they could move, the trees ahead were sheared off in a spray of debris. Weeds and leaf litter flew up as a tremendous wave of power bore down, as if the very earth had been lifted. Not good. They watched as 2 figures were flung free of the wreckage, their feet gouging the ground where they landed. Tang Hao, hooded, hammer in hand, stood opposite the mountain-sized gorilla. The 2 of them exchanged a titanic clash. Waves of soul power radiated outward, smashing trees and leveling anything in their immediate zone. Tang Hao's face was dark with fury and frustration. "Where did this Titan ape come from?" he muttered. He'd been tracking Xiao Wu. He'd hoped to capture her, perhaps putting her away until his own power rose enough to ensure no mistakes. He'd lost her once, even after tracing the martial soul certificate left at Notting College. He'd meant to regroup and try again. Then, by chance, he met her here in the Stardew Great Forest. He had planned not to miss the opportunity, but a 100,000-year Titan Giant Ape was hardly to be underestimated. If Tang Hao's spirit power hadn't already reached the high 90s, or if he hadn't had a martial soul as formidable as the Clear Sky Hammer, he might not have been a match. Even so, an old injury hampered him. He couldn't afford to push himself to the limit, or he'd be badly wounded. "I'll have to withdraw for now," he thought. "Roar!" The Titan Ape's roar split the air, but there was a strange, triumphant quality to it. Tang Hao frowned. Then his senses snagged on something, far off, a movement, something rushing toward them. His face changed. Not good. The Titan Ape's calling for help. He bolted, no time for hesitation. The Titan Ape wouldn't let him go. It roared, and its vast body exploded with yellow light. The air itself pressed down. Tang Hao's limbs grew heavy, as if he were wading through mud. "This is Gravity Field, 7th Soul Skill, Haoqian True Body." Tang Hao cursed as the gravity thickened. His 7th soul ring flared in response. Behind him, a black, colossal Haoqian hammer materialized, its black light roaring to life. He swung it, the head of the hammer like a small mountain, cleaving through the oppressive force and forcing some distance between him and the Titan Ape. The attack drove into a shimmering green barrier that snapped into existence before him. "Sky Blue Bull Python!" Tang Hao's expression tightened. He could not afford carelessness. Red light flared across his body. He opened his Killing God domain. The massive hammer struck the green barrier, sparks and shockwaves scattering outward as Tang Hao used the blow to escape. A cold, human-like voice issued from the green shadow. "Second brother, kill him!" The sky-blue bull python's eyes were knife-sharp as it fixed on the retreating Tang Hao. Despite its bulk, it moved with an uncanny speed, its enormous form covering ground in long, sinuous bounds. The Titan giant ape reared and drove off the earth with its enormous hind limbs, springing into pursuit. Roar! Both beasts surged forward in a terrifying tandem, one bounding, one slithering, heading straight for Tang Hao as he fled through the shattered, broken forest. Lin Chuan and his group watched, tense, the forest around them still trembling from the force of the fight. Chapter 50. I will remember this grudge. 100,000-year Titan giant ape, 100,000-year azure bull python, and 100,000-year soft-bone rabbit in human form. There really are hidden dragons and crouching tigers in the Star-Dew Great Forest. Tang Hao felt his astonishment, but he didn't slow down. Neither the Titan giant ape nor the azure bull python were ordinary soul beasts. At 100,000 years of cultivation, even many titled Douluo would be hard-pressed to fight them one-on-one. With both of them on the chase, Tang Hao barely managed to keep ahead. He coughed suddenly, and a fleck of blood spattered from the corner of his mouth. The earlier skirmish, though brief, had been brutal. Old injuries that had long lain dormant had been rattled awake. His chest burned. Behind him, the sound of rapid footsteps and the rustle of pursuit never ceased. "They're still after me. Are they insane?" Tang Hao's face went pale. He had to shake them off and find somewhere to tend his wounds, or the injuries would worsen and he'd be unable to fight for a long time. As he pushed on, his mental power picked up several fresh soul power signatures nearby. If there were others around, they could be used as a diversion. Without hesitating, Tang Hao veered in that direction. In a few breaths, he came upon a group, 1 man and 3 women. "Go!" Tang Hao charged. Shui Lan Shen, who had been preparing to flee with the others, turned furious at the sudden attacker. She quickly called her martial soul. 7th soul skill. Martial soul true body, condensed water flying Luan. One of Shui Lan Shen's soul rings flared deep black. Black light washed over her body as she shifted from human form into a real phoenix. Blue radiance blossomed, the air chilled sharply. Clutching Lin Chuan and the others, she prepared to flee. Tang Hao snorted and swung his Haoqian hammer with everything he had at the condensed water-flying Luan. Shui Lanshin's eyes flashed, her 8th soul ring ignited. A terrible storm tore the sky dark. Snow and wind howled, freezing the air. Humph! Tang Hao unleashed a red aura. His killing god domain flared out, pushing back the blizzard to keep the hail and cold from interfering, but it could not blunt the force of the clear sky hammer. Shui Langshin twisted her body to push the others in front and take the blow herself. The hammer struck. The phoenix screamed, blood spurted from its beak as it crashed down, tumbling like a broken kite. At that instant, a white streak of light sliced through the air. Ninefold Thunderblade, die! Lin Chuan had the night shadow in his hand. Silver lightning flashed along the blade. Tang Hao yanked back to dodge, but the strike was faster than he expected. A white-hot pain lanced his chest. He'd been cut deeply. "Boy!" Tang Hao roared, fury flaring. The young man's attack felt oddly familiar. He wanted to counter-strike, but a beastly roar from behind forced him to stop. He turned and fled again. Shui Lanshin collapsed out of her martial soul true body. Seeing her in tatters, Lin Chuan's eyes burned. That bastard Tang Hao. Divert trouble to the innocent and then attack them too. He'd remember this grudge. You won't get away that easily. His purple soul ring glowed. Soul-transformed arrows streaked into the sky. With the domineering aura of observation and a surge of mental power, white lights appeared. 3rd soul skill, Rain of Arrows. 8 arrows split and converged on Tang Hao. He scoffed, thinking them trivial. His mental power picked up the source of the soul power, and he swung the clear sky hammer to form an impenetrable shadow to block the volley. Then, out of nowhere, lightning struck the hammer. Zzz, thunder cracked and enveloped his body. A trace of thunder leaked into Tang Hao's veins, sending painful currents through him and freezing his movements. While he staggered, another arrow found its mark, right in his chest. Boom! Flames flared across his robes. Smoke and heat engulfed him. Tang Hao staggered out of the blaze, his face ashen. his robe singed and parts of his hair charred. His chest throbbed from the burn. The coordinated attacks had taken their toll. He'd escaped, but not unscathed. Humph. Even if I survive, I'd at least have you taste my clear sky hammer. Tang Hao snorted, racing off, his pace strained. Lin Chuan watched him run, still bristling with anger. Though their soul skills had been amplified by spirit refinement, they were still no match for a titled Douluo, yet at least they had left him some wounds. Consider this a down payment. I'll settle the rest with you later. As if on cue, two horrifying auras drew near. The azure bull python hissed, its lantern-like eyes narrowing with a human-like malice. The titan giant ape roared and looked over the group with predatory intent. Another human here to hunt souls? Kill him! The titan giant ape bellowed. Kill him! The azure bull python echoed, its voice cold and murderous. Lin Chuan, Qin Shan, run! Leng Man reacted first, lighting her soul ring, but the titan giant ape's massive hand slapped her like a collapsing boulder. She was sent flying, crashing into the ground and leaving a deep crater. Qin Shan's face went pale, despair flickering in her eyes. Human, how dare you? The titan giant ape thundered. Suddenly the azure bull python roared. A green radiance pulsed out from its body, and, in an instant, the environment turned verdant and sluggish. Qin Shan felt her limbs slow. Everything in her seemed to lose 30% of its speed. The titan giant ape pivoted and threw a punch. Stop! At the last instant, the giant fist halted, but the aftershock didn't. A blast of air ripped forward, a shockwave that sent leaves scattering like rain. That's close. Lin Chuan exhaled. He slid up behind Xiao Wu and wrapped an arm around her neck. The night shadow pressed against her chin. The blade bit into her skin, and a thin line of blood welled and trickled down the steel. He held her like that, part shield, part warning, as the dust settled and the beast's attention shifted. Chapter 51, Killing with a Sister in Arms. Despicable humans. Two gusts of air blasted from the azure bull python's nostrils, the sound like distant thunder. The pressure made the eardrums ring. Lin Chuan felt his heart hammer against his ribs as if it might burst. He tightened instinctively, as if clenching himself could keep him safe. A muffled groan came from the girl in his arms. He'd moved too abruptly and she'd been hurt. Human, let Xiao Wu go. The azure bull python demanded, its voice suddenly clear and human. Lin Chuan loosened his grip a little and let the girl settle against him, though he kept his guard up. Two 200,000-year-old soul beasts stood before them, not ordinary creatures, and one careless move could leave them pulverized. Long time no see, Xiao Wu. Lin Chuan dropped his voice and leaned closer. The girl in his arms looked different, older, more composed. Her long black hair was braided in tight scorpion plaits that hung past her calves. From so close he could smell the faint floral scent in her hair. She wore a pink dress that clung to the beginnings of a woman's figure, tall, well over 1.7 meters, with a slender waist and graceful proportions. The mischievous little girl he remembered had grown into someone elegant. You're Ogawa! Xiao Wu, startled and disbelieving, blinked at him. Her face showed equal parts surprise and reproach. It's me. Been a while, Lin Chuan said. Xiao Wu rolled her eyes. Been a while, but your greeting is to grab my neck and hold a knife to me. That's not the friendliest reunion. They spoke like old acquaintances. The familiarity felt oddly out of place under the looming threat. The azure bull python cut in, agitated. Human, let Sister Xiao Wu go. I don't want trouble. We didn't mean to antagonize you, Lin Chuan replied smoothly. We came into the Stardew Forest to hunt souls. Those two attacked us without cause, so we had to defend ourselves. Let her go, and I'll let you go, Lin Chuan proposed. The azure bull python nearly agreed at once, but Lin Chuan shook his head. I don't trust that. If you release her now, our fate will be entirely in your hands. That's not acceptable. What do you want then? The python asked, pupils narrowed. You take the titan giant ape and leave. Once we're clear of the Stardew Forest, we'll let Xiao Wu go. Lin Chuan kept his tone steady. The azure bull python bristled. Impossible. Humans, you think you can trick us? Do you take us for fools? Before the standoff could escalate, Xiao Wu spoke up. Okay, damning. Xiao Chuan is my friend. I trust him. Let them go. But Sister Xiao Wu, the python started, hesitating as it glanced between them. Xiao Wu's expression turned serious, and the python sighed, yielding only slightly. Fine, but Lao and I must stay nearby. I won't agree otherwise. Xiao Wu wasn't surprised. She turned her head toward Lin Chuan. Xiao Chuan, I can vouch for him. Da Ming and Ming won't hurt you. They'll make sure you leave the forest safely. Lin Chuan looked at her for a long moment and said nothing. The silence stretched until he finally spoke. I believe you, but I don't trust the two of them. Rather than maintain this deadlock, let one of them go. The Titan giant ape can follow, but Xiao Wu, you stay with me until we're out of Douluo Forest. Is that acceptable? Xiao Wu snorted but smiled ruefully. You're so cautious. She then addressed the Azure Bull Python directly. Da Ming, go back first. I'll come with Ming later. Reluctant, the python consented. Before retreating, it gave orders to the Titan giant ape. Second brother, keep Xiao Wu safe. If anything happens, shout. I'll be there immediately. The python's glance toward Lin Chuan was unreadable, suspicion wrapped in a cold, dignified threat. The Titan giant ape thumped its chest with a massive fist in agreement, a grunting promise. The Azure Bull Python slid away like a great blue snake, sleek and arrogant. It stopped 2 kilometers off, keeping them in sight, agreed in words but not truly at ease. That distance was as much a warning as an assurance. Lin Chuan exhaled, relief loosening the tension under his skin. Xiao Wu, thank you. You're welcome, she said with a small, wry smile. If you hadn't told me about that thing and brought me back here, I'd probably be dead by now. But if you want to thank me, how about letting me go? It hurts. She tapped her chin. A thin line of blood had started to run. Lin Chuan's expression stayed firm. Not yet, he said, refusing without hesitation. Xiao Wu huffed, annoyed, but didn't push. She settled closer against him, and together they waited, surrounded by ancient trees and watchful soul beasts, tied for the moment by a fragile truce, and by a promise neither fully trusted. Chapter 52, Rabbit's Little Thoughts. Teacher Qin, hurry, heal Dean Shui and Director Leng. The situation had stabilized for the moment, and Lin Chuan urged Qin Shan to treat Shui Lanqin and Leng Man. Under Tang Dachui's brutal attack, they'd taken terrible damage. It was only thanks to Lin Chuan's martial spirit avatar that their lives had been spared. With a healing soul master like Qin Shan on hand, their wounds could be prevented from worsening. A small blessing in a bad turn of events. Huh? Oh, right, okay. Qin Shan blinked back to awareness and nodded, though her limbs trembled with the shock. She steadied herself, gathered a cold vine and a water orchid, and placed them together to summon a healing narcissus. A soft blue light flowed out, and the 2 victims' injuries slowly began to knit closed. Lin Chuan let out a relieved breath. If the soul hunter hadn't brought a soul healer along this time, he might have had to watch Shui Lanqin and Leng Man suffer. That bastard Tang Dachui deserved to die, he thought through gritted teeth. Xiao Chuan, are they your teachers? Xiao Wu's question pulled him out of the darker thoughts, and the agitation in his eyes smoothed away. He looked at her and nodded gently. Yes, I'm a student of Tianshui College now. They're the dean and the head of faculty. Wow, that's great, Xiao Wu said, a small sadness flitting across her face. Unlike Lin Chuan, she'd been forced to stay in the Douluo Forest for years. How did you get discovered by Tang? Lin Chuan shook his head and answered before she could finish. By Tang Hao? Tang Hao? Xiao Wu's face changed as the name registered. Oh, you mean Tang San's father, the former titled Douluo. She curled her lips. I was bored in the forest and went out for a walk. I didn't expect to run into him. That guy. It fit what Lin Chuan had suspected. Xiao Wu had always been a restless spirit. It wasn't surprising she'd blunder into someone like that. Still, the Douluo Forest was the home of the soul beasts, guarded by the Azure Bull Python and the Titan giant ape. No one under the strength of 3-peak Douluos would dare do anything there. By the way, Xiao Chuan, what's your soul power now? Lin Chuan asked. Xiao Wu turned her head with an unmistakable air of pride. Sister Xiao Wu is at level 35 now. How's that? Pretty strong, huh? Oh, Lin Chuan raised an eyebrow, surprised but not shocked. It made sense. In the original timeline, Xiao Wu had reached 29 by age 12 after years at Notting Academy with little practice. Back in the Douluo Forest, she'd already broken through several levels. 35 was plausible, the growth rate of a 100,000-year soul beast. Still, he had his own development to consider. 35 is impressive. I'm at level 50 myself. I couldn't stand on stage and make you laugh. Level 50? You're joking. Xiao Wu's smile froze and she exclaimed in disbelief. Lin Chuan grinned and let 4 soul rings appear behind him in quick succession. 1 yellow, 2 purple, and 1 black, their light startlingly bright. Xiao Wu sucked in a breath. He'd been only level 25 years ago. How did he grow so fast? She stared, slack-jawed, and finally let out a long, awed sigh. You're unreal, Ogawa, she said. Haha, I'm still too slow, Lin Chuan said, deflecting the praise. Against Tang Hao and the Titan giant ape, I couldn't even protect myself. He had to take you as a hostage to survive. Hardly monstrous. Both Da Ming and Ming have been training for years, and you've only been serious for a few. Give you another 20 years, and I bet even the 2 of them together couldn't beat you, he added. Xiao retorted softly, something like hope or mischief in her eyes. If Lin Chuan could get that strong, with his help, she might even have a chance for revenge. Cough, cough. A small cough came from behind them. Under Qin Shan's attentive care, Shui Lanxin and Leng Man were regaining consciousness. Titan giant ape? Shui Lanxin's face drained of color as she opened her eyes and saw the mountain-sized ape standing not far away. She forced herself upright. Okawa, run. I'll hold it off. The sound of her cough cut off the rest. Leng Man didn't speak, but his posture showed the same stubborn resolve. The sight moved Lin Chuan. They'd fought hard for him. Dean Shui, Director Leng, it's fine. The Titan ape won't attack. Sit down and let Teacher Qin finish the treatment. What do you mean? They were baffled, but when both confirmed the ape was staying at a distance and making no move, their tension eased. What's going on? They exchanged worried looks. Lin Chuan shrugged. The situation's complicated. I can't explain everything right now. Just know we're safe for the time being. Shui Lanxin's eyes drifted toward the girl whose wrist Lin Chuan still held. She leaned in and took a closer look, and in that instant, she caught a clue that made her pupils shrink in shock. Lin Chuan shot her a quick glance. The dean took a deep breath and tried to steady herself, but the surprise was plain. A transformed soul beast, she whispered. She had only ever read about such things in books, a legend, yet here it was, right before her eyes, 100,000-year soul beast in human form. The discovery made her heart race. Even a soul beast of limited combat power like this was an incredible treasure. Any soul master would covet 100,000-year soul bone, let alone a soul beast itself. For a moment, her mind spun with possibilities. This could change everything. But then her gaze went to the Titan giant ape again, and the image of that palm larger than a man calmed her rising wonder. Some dangers were still unmistakably real. Chapter 53. The strong prey on the weak. The world is cruel. Half an hour later, Qin Shan's forehead was slick with sweat. The daffodil in her hand had dulled and was slowly fading away. My soul power is exhausted. I can only heal them this far for now, she said, voice thin. Her lips were pale and her movements sluggish. This is already a lot. Thank you, Teacher Qin, Shui Lanxin managed gratefully. Both Shui Lanxin and Director Leng checked their injuries carefully. The internal wounds and fractures weren't completely mended, but they could move again and could release their martial spirits, enough that they wouldn't be helpless. We'll handle the rest ourselves, Shui Lanxin said, rising slowly as a wary look passed over her face. Not far off, 100,000-year-old soul beast watched them closely. The old tension and unease had returned, a dangerous reminder that no matter how tempting a prize that beast might be, you had to live to enjoy it. We should leave the Xingdou Great Forest now, Shui Lanxin urged. It's not safe. Lin Chuan shook his head gently. We haven't accomplished our mission yet. We can't walk away empty-handed. Shui Lanxin's expression fell. But Director Leng and I are injured. If something happens again, we'll be easy prey. She glanced pointedly at Xiao Wu and the massive Titan giant ape. The implication was clear without her finishing the sentence. Lin Chuan nodded toward the ape. We don't need to bring in Director Leng. There's a strong one right here, he said. Shui Lanxin and Leng Man froze. The thought that a 100,000-year-old beast might be asked to help hunt other soul beasts felt reckless. Lin Chuan saw their reaction but didn't seem deterred. Look, Ming, he said to the ape, using its name, help us find a 10,000-year soul beast. After I absorb the soul ring, I'll leave right away and return Xiao Wu to you. The Titan ape answered with a low, ferocious roar, baring sharp teeth. Lin Chuan kept speaking, trying to bargain them into cooperation. We were just passing through and got attacked by you and the Azure Bull Python. Director Leng was seriously hurt. As compensation, helping us hunt one 10,000-year soul beast isn't too much to ask. No, the Titan ape shook its huge head like a rattle. I only want the soul ring. You can take the corpse to eat. That way no one wastes anything. Lin Chuan didn't give up. The ape still refused. Finally, leaning in with the night shadow knife pressed to Xiao Wu's throat, he adopted a harder tone. Worst case, we all die, he said. Then nobody gets anything. The ape bristled, and the oppressive force it radiated doubled. Shui Lanxin and the others tensed with fear. The standoff hardened into an impasse. In the end, Lin Chuan was the first to lose patience. It was too much to expect one soul beast to risk another for the sake of a bargain. Fine, if you won't help, forget it. He eased the knife away and stepped back. Dean, Director, Teacher Qin, let's go. Relief washed over Shui Lanxin and Leng Man. Facing a 100,000-year-old soul beast had been far too risky. As they opened a path, Xiao Wu seized a moment to ask something that had bothered her for years. Xiao Chuan, why didn't you attack me at the beginning? She asked, voice small but insistent. Lin Chuan glanced at her without hesitation. Because your soul ring isn't compatible with my martial soul. I can't absorb it. As for the soul bone, sure, it's tempting, but it would be wasted on me right now. Xiao Wu frowned. So you didn't attack because you couldn't take my soul ring? That was your plan? Honestly, I'd planned to wait until level 90, Lin Chuan admitted. Xiao Wu's brow furrowed in deeper confusion. Why do humans have to hunt soul beasts at all? Can't we coexist peacefully? Shui Lanxin and Director Leng exchanged looks. No one had expected such a naive question. Lin Chuan, however, regarded her calmly. The Xingdou Forest is the soul beast's home, but can you guarantee every soul beast will stay there and never wander into the human world? The question silenced Xiao Wu. Lin Chuan went on. Soul masters are stronger because they can use soul rings to speed up cultivation. If soul beasts were simply left to grow without restriction, they could become powerful enough to attack humans. Human survival has often depended on keeping those beasts contained. He explained plainly, when soul masters eat soul beast flesh, they cultivate faster. Soul beasts that consume humans or powerful soul masters increase their own strength. That creates a fundamental contradiction. Either humans hunt soul beasts to keep the balance, or soul beasts prey on humans. Both sides are doing what they must to survive. Neither is purely right. Whether it's humans hunting soul beasts or soul beasts devouring humans, you can argue either is justified. They're different species in different positions. The strong prey on the weak. That's how the world works, and no one can change it. Xiao Wu's face fell. She wanted to argue, to defend the soul beasts, but she found Lin Chuan's logic hard to refute. He added softly, that doesn't mean soul beasts are evil. Not every soul beast deserves to die. But in a ruthless place, even innocence counts for little. The world is cruel. Chapter 54. If you let me live, you will suffer. In the end, it all came down to desire. Soul beasts guarded their territories and lived by appetite. Humans wanted more. They craved great power, glittering treasures, high status, even immortality. By nature, humans were disadvantaged in body, soul power, and lifespan. Their few advantages were unity and creativity. In this world, soul beasts possessed two kinds of treasures, soul rings and soul bones, and that made them inevitable prey for soul masters. It was simply the way things were. Even if a spirit-transferring tower were to be built in the future, the numbers of soul beasts would continue to dwindle. And even without humans, soul beasts would still fight among themselves. Different factions, even within the same species, would always arise and slaughter each other. The same was true of humans. Conflict was the truth of existence. Xiao Wu stood at the edge of the Stardew Forest and watched Lin Chuan and the others hurry away. The girl said nothing. Her earlier words kept spinning through her mind. Sister Xiao Wu, let's go back. The Titan giant ape hovered nearby, murmuring in its low voice. Xiao Wu forced a smile, nodded gently, and replied, All right, let's go. She and the orangutan slipped into the forest canopy and were swallowed by the trees. Lin Chuan and his party kept running until they were well clear of the Stardew Forest. Only then did they slow down and breathe easier, reassured that the Titan giant ape had not followed them. We're safe for now. Let's stop and rest, Lin Chuan said softly and halted first. Everyone was shaken. It was a blessing that the Titan giant ape hadn't acted, but after today's events, Lin Chuan knew it wouldn't be so lucky next time. They had been chased by 100,000-year soul beast and seen it transform, an experience none of them would forget. Luck could not be relied upon forever. This feels unreal, Shui Lanchin said, leaning against a tree, sweat cooling on her skin. We actually escaped from 100,000-year soul beast alive. We even saw it transformed. I thought we were done for when we met that titled Douluo. Qinshan nodded, her face pale and still trembling. It was the first time I've seen a 100,000-year soul beast transform. I won't be going near the Stardew Forest again for a long while. By contrast, Lengman remained composed. She cut to the heart of the matter. What do we do next? Lin Chuan still hasn't found his fifth soul ring. At those words, Shui Langshan and Qin Shan snapped back to reality. That oversight, forgetting Lin Chuan's soul ring in the chaos, stung. There's nothing we can do about it now, Shui Langshan admitted. We were just unlucky. Both Leng Man and I are injured, and Teacher Qin's soul power hasn't fully recovered. We should find a place to recuperate first, then re-enter the Stardew Forest when we're ready. Lin Chuan shook his head. No. I made threats against the Titan giant ape and the Azure bull python. They might remember my aura. We were lucky this time, but next time they may hold a grudge. It's better if we don't go back into the Stardew Forest for a while. That's true, Shui Lanchin agreed. The transformation being exposed changed the stakes. If word spread, the 200,000-year soul beasts might rush to clear out any human interference. It was too dangerous to return for the foreseeable future. One by one, the others agreed with Lin Chuan's caution. Shui Lanchin grinned and teased. You were so brave earlier, taking hostages, trying to get the Titan ape to help hunt the soul beast. Why are you suddenly so cowardly? Lin Chuan shrugged. A man can be bold in one moment and cautious the next. Shui Lanchin rolled her eyes, amused and half-exasperated. No one quibbled further. Pragmatism had taken over. So where will we find his soul ring? Qin Shan asked. We can't risk the Stardew Forest, so our only practical option is the Sunset Forest, Lin Chuan said. There aren't many 10,000-year soul beasts there, but we can always look. Reluctantly, they accepted that plan. Lin Chuan's aura had certainly been logged by both the Titan giant ape and the Azure bull python. Until he could be sure of protecting himself, taking risks was foolish. All right, Shui Lanchin said. Let's go back to Tianshui Academy. Teacher Qin can help heal us, and then we'll head to the Sunset Forest. We must keep what happened in the Stardew Forest a secret. No telling anyone. We don't want unnecessary trouble. No problem, Qin Shan replied. Her healing soul power was limited in its immediate effects. It would take time and medicine for real recovery. So they piled into their carriage in silence, exhausted and subdued. Lin Chuan pressed his head against the carriage wall and thought. It wasn't the lost chance to obtain a soul ring that bothered him so much. After all, failure happened. What riled him was Tang Hao. Tang Hao had made the whole situation worse by provoking the beasts, and Lin Chuan could not forgive someone who voluntarily stirred trouble and then watched. He wanted to make Tang Hao pay. The obvious question popped up. Why not report Tang Hao to the Spirit Hall, ask them to send people to Shrek Academy, and have the Spirit Hall deal with him? The idea flashed through his mind and was quickly discarded. For one, he couldn't rely on a Deus Ex Machina. Even if the Spirit Hall believed the report, its leaders might be otherwise occupied. Bibi Dong, for example, might currently be undergoing the Rakshasa God trial and unavailable to intervene. Moreover, Bibi Dong's aims were large and strange. She sought to upend the world in her own way and might not single out Tang Hao. Without Bibi Dong's personal involvement, the elders at the Spirit Hall could not guarantee they'd capture someone like Tang Hao. And if a Spirit Hall adherent decided to act, that was a different matter entirely. One person could change everything. If Tang Hao fled, the situation would quickly spiral out of control. It was safer to maintain the current balance for the moment. There was another, more strategic option. Wait until the all-continent high-level Spirit Master competition. When the finals were held in Wuhan City, Lin Chuan could go and register his presence in advance. Then, any attempt by Tang Hao to escape could be stifled, like catching a turtle in a jar. Still, Lin Chuan's gut wanted a more personal reckoning. He remembered how, years ago at Notting College, Tang Hao had watched silently from the sidelines while trouble happened. That had left a bad taste, and now, with history repeating itself, Lin Chuan felt the urge to settle both the old and the new accounts himself. For now, though, they had to get well. Survival came first. Revenge could wait. Chapter 55, Beginners in Alchemy. At Tianshui College, in the little wooden house by the lake, Shui Lanqin and Leng Man were still convalescing. Lin Chuan had stayed there as well. A faint, satisfied message glowed in his mind. You carefully nurtured the golden flame earth fire, and you have gained something. The quality of the golden flame earth fire has slightly improved. Finally, Lin Chuan opened his eyes slowly, a glint of flame flaring in them. After so much nurturing, the golden flame earth fire in his dantian had reached the point where it could be used for alchemy. The next step was to actually refine medicine. Although he had obtained the alchemy decision and couldn't practice it in full yet, Lin Chuan had not neglected theory. He had memorized refining procedures and the properties of many herbs. Now that the fire was ready, it was time for a first attempt. He sat cross-legged to clear his mind and bring his state to its peak. With a flick of his fingers, the medicine cauldron he'd bought in Gengshan City materialized, and a few bamboo baskets appeared beside him, packed neatly with herbs Shui Lanqin had sent. The dean didn't ask what he planned to do. She'd simply sent the materials as soon as he asked. Time was short. He had to learn alchemy before heading into the sunset forest. The fairy grass in the yin-yang eye of ice and fire could not fall into the wrong hands. Alchemy, Lin Chuan reminded himself, is about refining the essences of different materials and combining them so their medicinal properties are maximized. The foundation of it all is fire control. Different ingredients require different temperatures and tempos. Some need fierce fire, some gentle warmth, some must be repeatedly tempered. Mistime the heat, and you burn the medicine instead of refining it. So before adding a single herb, he practiced controlling the flame. He extended his hand and called the golden flame earth fire forth. The red, searing tongue of flame responded like a living thing, swelling and shrinking with his will, its heat rising and falling. He coaxed it, learning subtleties of size and temperature until it moved as he intended. You practiced fire control seriously once, and you gained a little. Your fire control proficiency has improved. You practiced fire control seriously once, and you gained a little. Your fire control proficiency has improved, and your mental power has increased slightly. For half a day, Lin Chuan worked on nothing but fire control. When the messages in his head had jumped and settled enough times, he felt ready. Now, he said, and let the golden flame into the cauldron. Heat spread through the metal, and he tuned his soul force to steer the flame's concentration and temperature. The fire swirled, forming a steady vortex. He sealed his posture and focused his mind on the flame, making it respond like an extension of himself. He picked the first herb and tossed it into the cauldron. The plant vanished into the fire, not consumed in a single blaze, but repeatedly burned and cooled as he controlled the process. A faint medicinal scent rose. After a while, powder settled into a pale pool. Lin Chuan lowered the flame to examine the powder. Most of it was fine, but there were patches of black slag, evidence of a quench poorly timed. The flame hadn't been consistent. Part of the herb had been scorched. You carefully quenched the medicinal materials once and gained a little. The proficiency of fire control was improved, and the proficiency of medicine refining increased slightly. He didn't dwell on the failure. After a quick adjustment and a clean of the cauldron, he tried the same herb again. The second time the process went more smoothly. The powder showed much less charring. You carefully refined the herbs once and gained a little. The proficiency of fire control has improved, and the proficiency of medicine refining has increased slightly. Again, encouraged, he worked through a third attempt. This time, the herb's essence condensed into clean powder without slag. With each repetition, his control sharpened. Next, he moved on to the second herb, then the third. Each ingredient had its own temperament, and there were small wobbles in the process, but repeated practice made his adjustments more instinctive. Before long, He had 4 separate vials of medicinal essence lined up on a cloth beside the cauldron. Huh, this is meticulous work. He wiped the sweat from his brow. Being a pharmacist required patience and precision. There was no rushing. He sat back, settled his breathing, and prepared for the final, most difficult phase, fusing the essences. One hand guided the flame, the other fed the refined materials into the cauldron. He watched their reactions closely, wrapping the mixture in controlled heat while observing how the essences bonded. There was almost no rejection. The components began to weave together. Refine, condense, form, the 3 stages of alchemy could not be skipped. A delicate medicinal aroma rose, and Lin Chuan felt the reaction approaching completion. He withdrew the flame at the right moment and let the cauldron cool. 3 light red pills lay quietly inside, their surfaces still faintly glowing with residual heat. They weren't perfectly smooth. Small pits and bumps marred their shape, but they were whole, and they had formed in a single attempt. You carefully refine medicine once, and you have gained a little. Your fire control proficiency has improved, and your medicine refining proficiency has increased slightly. It worked. Lin Chuan breathed, lifting one to inspect it. As a first try at pill condensation, it was more than acceptable. He laughed softly to himself. 3 pills from 1 furnace, first-class qi recovering pills, no less. For a beginner, that was a solid start. It wasn't mastery, only the opening steps, but it was a promising one. Chapter 56, Sunset Again. For the next few days, Lin Chuan hardly left the medicine cauldron. Refining pills drained his soul power and spirit. He would sit cross-legged to recover, then return to his brazier and continue. Life was hard, but the rows of elixir bottles stored in his soul guide vault made him feel a little better. Besides the qi restoration pills, he had mastered several new methods of pill refinement. His technique had grown much more skilled, and his success rate had risen. He still couldn't hope to cure Douluo's condition outright, but there was a chance he could at least ease the poison inside him. After that, it was time to go to Sunset Forest and work on the Ice and Fire Eyes plan. All the medicinal materials Dean Shui sent have been used up. We'll need another batch, Lin Chuan said aloud to himself one evening. If we just ask the Shui family for more, they won't hand them over. We'll have to trade. Now that he was an alchemist, money wouldn't be a problem in the future. Even a first-grade elixir, once released, would drive many soul masters wild. Elixirs were a lucrative monopoly, sales would be easy. The real danger was that excessive gains would invite covetousness. A single Shui family might not be able to withstand that kind of pressure. Perhaps, Lin Chuan thought, they could raise Douluo's banner to sell under if only Douluo could be cured. Otherwise, given Douluo's temperament, such a promotion might backfire. He was still working out the details when a soft voice called from outside his door. "Xiao Chuan, are you in there?" Lin Chuan put the medicine cauldron away, stood and opened the door. Shui Lanshan stood on the threshold, smiling. "Dean Shui, have you recovered?" he asked. Shui Lanshan nodded. "I've fully recovered. I discussed it with Director Leng. We'll head to Sunset Forest tomorrow." "Good. Let's leave at first light." All preparations were made. The next morning, the 4 of them moved into Sunset Forest. Lin Chuan led the way. This wasn't his first time here, so he knew the routes. Compared with places like Star Do Forest, Sunset Forest had fewer 10,000-year soul beasts, and they weren't as grotesquely overgrown. Still, after the last incident, everyone was cautious. Finding a truly suitable 10,000-year soul beast in the forest wouldn't be easy. Lin Chuan braced for a long hunt. They spent 5 days scouring the woods. There were plenty of beasts, but none with the bloodline or age he wanted. Dusty and exhausted, they finally stopped to rest. "Let's take a break," Shui Lanshan said, wiping her face. Living outdoors and staying alert around the clock had left them all drained. Lin Chuan reached into his pocket and produced a small porcelain vial. "Here, Dean Shui, this is for you." Shui Lanshan opened the cork. An instant, rich aroma escaped. Everyone inhaled and felt noticeably refreshed. "Is this a pill?" Qin Shan asked. "It's a nourishing pill," Lin Chuan said. "I refined it myself. It restores energy and has no side effects." "You made these?" Shui Lanshan's eyes widened. "So the batch of herbs I gave you earlier, you used them to make these pills?" "I've heard of nourishing pills before, but they're rare and expensive on the market. I tested the formula." Qinshan said skeptically as he leaned in to examine the small pill. Lin Chuan smiled calmly. You'll see when you try it, he said. Shui Lanshan tipped the vial and rolled a small round grain into her palm. The pill bore a faint pattern, barely visible. Let me, Leng Man said, and popped the pill into her mouth before Shui Lanshan could. How do you feel, Director Leng? Qinshan asked. Very good, she replied after a moment. My mind feels clear, the fatigue lifting. It's very pleasant. Shui Lanshan and Qinshan both swallowed a pill. After a few breaths, they felt the same, a rush of clarity as if they'd had a deep, restorative sleep. The weariness that had weighed on them vanished. This really works, Shui Lanshan said, delighted. How did you make it, Xiao Chuan? Lin Chuan chuckled. It was just a first-grade elixir at heart, he thought, but his refinement raised it nearly to second-grade strength. He didn't need to say that out loud. Their reactions were explanation enough. A sudden roar split the air, cutting through their conversation. Every head snapped toward the sound. That was close, Qinshan said. Let's go see. Feeling invigorated by the pills, they followed the direction of the roar and climbed 2 large trees to get a better look. When they caught sight of the beast, Lin Chuan's eyes widened. It's a dark gold terraclaw bear, he said, astonished. Its cultivation, over 10,000 years. A dark gold terraclaw bear? Here? Shui Lanshan and the others went pale. The dark gold terraclaw bear wasn't just a powerful soul beast, it carried behemoth bloodline traits, famed for both offense and defense. A mature individual could challenge a giant dragon. Having one of that age in Sunset Forest was unexpected and dangerous. How did one end up here? Lengman murmured, frowning. Any 10,000-year dark gold terraclaw bear could take on a titled Douluo. They were far from confident in confronting it directly. We should avoid being seen, Shui Lanshan said quietly. If it spots us, we'll be in trouble. Lin Chuan's eyes, however, gleamed. A wild idea stirred at the edges of his expression. He imagined the soul rings such a beast would bear, the power they could grant. Xiao Chuan, you don't mean to try to take a soul ring from that thing, do you? Shui Lanshan whispered, disbelief and fear in her voice. I won't deny I thought about it, Lin Chuan admitted. Shui Lanshan's mouth twitched. Little guy, please spare us. Even if it fought a titled Douluo, we are no match, not even combined. Don't worry, Dean Shui. I don't plan to have us fight it. Lin Chuan smiled, oddly confident. We'll find someone to help. The others looked at him, stunned, but Lin Chuan's grin suggested he already had a plan in mind. Chapter 57. You don't want to see Du Guyan die from the poison, do you? Xiao Chuan, are you sure you don't want us to follow you? In the Sunset Forest, Shui Lanshan asked casually. She didn't know exactly what Lin Chuan planned to do, but if it involved a 10,000-year-old dark gold terraclaw bear, only a titled Douluo could handle it. Since it concerned a titled Douluo, Lin Chuan's insistence on going alone surprised her. No need, Dean Shui, Lin Chuan said. I didn't expect to run into the dark gold terraclaw bear here, but now that I have, I can't just ignore it. You can't help me if something goes wrong, so it's better for you to head back. Dugubo had a difficult temper, and adding Shui Lanshan and the others to the hunt would only complicate matters. Lin Chuan preferred to go alone. You brat, are you getting tired of us already? Shui Lanshan protested, then shook her head. I don't know what you're planning, but we came together, and we'll return together. The 3 of us will shadow the terraclaw bear from a distance. We'll wait until you come back, then we'll move in together. All right, fine. But Dean, please be careful, Lin Chuan replied. He didn't argue further. Between the 3 of them, as long as they avoided provoking the bear and kept out of the Sunset Forest's more dangerous paths, they could protect themselves. To guard against accidents, Lin Chuan handed over several bottles of elixirs, refined soul medicines whose effects were excellent even against contra-level threats, nourishing pills, qi recovery pills, wind movement pills. Shui Lanshan looked at the elixirs in his hands with a complex expression, as if realizing she'd been underestimating the boy. Dean Shui, Director Leng, Teacher Qin, take care, Lin Chuan said solemnly, then turned and left alone. The Sunset Forest wasn't as vast as the Star Forest, and the Ice and Fire Eye lay near the volcano. Even without precise directions, it wasn't hard to find, so long as he watched out for the spirit beasts that made the forest dangerous. After a long walk, he reached a high ridge overlooking a valley. Before him, the air shimmered with a thick, dark green poisonous mist. Even at this distance, he could smell that metallic, fishy tang that marked a powerful toxin. This had to be the poison array Douluo had set. The miasma had choked the entire ice and fire eye. Except for a few hardier plants, humans and spirit beasts would find it almost impossible to pass through alive. So he even put poison in the sky. Douluo really is cautious. Lin Chuan swallowed a poison prevention pill, put his right palm forward, and called forth golden flames and earth fire. As the toxic mist drifted close, the flames burned it away to nothing. Under the twin protection of golden flame and earth fire, the iridescent fog couldn't touch him. Relieved to see the mist pose no threat, he pushed forward without hesitation. Using his keen senses to avoid the strange venomous plants, Lin Chuan made it to the center of the array quickly. A bare hill rose in front of him, and the moment he crossed the formation, a voice cried out from the valley below. "How brave! Someone dares to break my poison array!" A pale green flash lit the air as an old man with jade green hair lifted his head and peered toward Lin Chuan. A cold aura spilled off him. He snorted, rose into the air, and vanished in a streak of green light, speeding toward the ridge. Lin Chuan noticed Douluo's approach instantly. The pressure wasn't as overwhelming as Tang Hao's, but it was still frightening, threaded with malice, and likely to turn lethal at the slightest provocation. He narrowed his eyes, fingers flexed, and Ye Ying appeared in his palm. In his other hand he held the Wuhan longbow, ready. With a rush of wind, a green stream of light sliced past. Lin Chuan stepped aside. As the light dissipated, a thin, angular old man landed, his cheeks hollow, his dark green hair and pupils strikingly vivid. "Huh? You actually made it through," Douluo snorted. "You still a kid?" Douluo's surprise showed. He knew the poison array he had set could stop even many Contra-level Douluo. Yet here a boy, clearly far younger than his granddaughter, stood before him, unscathed and quick enough to dodge his attack. Curiosity flickered across the old man's face. "Boy, who are you?" "Junior Lin Chuan, greetings to Dugumia," Lin Chuan answered, cupping his hands lightly in a polite greeting. But his focus didn't waver. Douluo's brow rose. "You know who I am?" "Of course," Lin Chuan said. "The Jade Phosphorus Douluo is famous. The younger generation has heard of you." He kept his tone casual, trying not to reveal anything. But Douluo was unmoved. He snorted and turned his aura inward, preparing to crush Lin Chuan with force. "Don't think you can butter me up," Douluo said. "You trespassed into my domain. Confess." "Wait, Lord Douluo, just hear me out," Lin Chuan said quickly. Time had already become critical. If Douluo's hiding place became public, it would invite enemies, and more importantly, those yin-yang eyes of ice and fire in the valley would be exposed. There was no way to let that happen. Douluo's eyes narrowed into slits. "Begging won't help. Once you set foot here, you can never leave." The old man's soul power surged. Murderous intent coiled over him like a blade. Lin Chuan met that gaze evenly and said, "I can help you detoxify. Dare you speak of that?" Douluo's pupils shrank. His hostility intensified, but there was also a trace of incredulity. "I'm not joking," Lin Chuan replied. "I can remove the poison that's poisoning you and your granddaughter." "You think you can save us?" Douluo's voice was cold as ice. "If you don't believe me, then take my life in exchange. You have your granddaughter and yourself. I have my life. If I fail, you can kill me. If I succeed, your granddaughter lives. Which outcome would you prefer?" "You are threatening me." Douluo's wrath flared. Lin Chuan shook his head. "Not a threat. A fact. I can detoxify you and your granddaughter. After all, Lord Douluo, you don't want to see your granddaughter die from the poison, do you?" Douluo fell silent. The unexpected directness of the offer, and the name Lin Chuan used, left him momentarily speechless as he weighed the impossible proposition. Chapter 58. Game Douluo's heart sank when he met Lin Chuan's fearless stare. Normally, if anyone threatened him, he would have let the poison in his veins gnaw at them as punishment. But right now, he couldn't act. Annoyed though he was, he had to admit this kid had found his weak spot. "Boy," Douluo said, forcing his voice to stay even, "how do you know I'm poisoned? And have you seen Yan Yan?" Douluo asking instead of attacking felt like a concession. Lin Chuan allowed himself a small smile. "I know a bit about Qi Huang poisons. Your Majesty Douluo's hair and pupils are classic signs, mild but unmistakable, As for Dugu Yan, I've met her once. Her symptoms gave the rest away. He spoke calmly, neither shrinking nor boasting. Dugubo raised an eyebrow and found himself believing it a little. Even if you're right, he said, why should I trust you can cure me? Lin Chuan spread his hands. To be honest, I don't mean to boast, but the poison array outside looks like something your majesty would set. The fact that I passed through it whole is proof of my ability, isn't it? That answer made Dugubo's eyes twitch, but he kept his expression stern. Just getting through the array isn't enough to convince me. I can start by detoxifying your majesty's granddaughter, Dugu Yan, Lin Chuan offered. He had expected resistance and had prepared for it. Before Dugubo could reply, he sneered, You haven't proved anything. I won't let you touch Yan Yan yet. Lin Chuan only smiled faintly. Please believe me, your majesty, I have no desire to die any more than you do. I wouldn't joke about a matter like this. He added quietly, I'll be honest, I can't promise to remove every trace of poison from your majesty immediately, but I can relieve it. Dugu Yan is weak now, and her condition isn't severe. I'm confident I can cure her. Those words were like seeds planted. Even if Dugubo didn't fully trust him, he dared not kill the one who claimed he could cure the granddaughter. A drowning man will clutch at any straw, however slim the hope. Still, Dugubo bristled. You don't even know what poison I have, and you speak so boldly. Do you think I'm that easily fooled? Dugubo's pride as a poisoned Douluo flared. Few surpassed him in that field. Yet he was helpless against the poison within himself. How dare this kid talk big? Since we're at this point, there's no need to hide, Lin Chuan said, meeting Dugubo's glare squarely. This poisoning is hereditary. Both you and your kin are afflicted, so the source must be your martial soul, the green phosphorus snake king. Am I right? Dugubo's hand twitched toward killing, but he forced himself to stay his motion. Boy, you are bolder than I thought. You know my secret. Aren't you afraid I'll kill you where you stand? Lin Chuan's face didn't change. If I say it, it's because I can prove it. And if I do help your majesty detoxify you and you repay kindness with enmity, then I have nothing left to say. I accept the consequence. Dugubo's eyes tightened. He hadn't expected such composure. Fine, he said after a long moment. Since you say you can treat my Yan Yan, I'll believe you for now. If you succeed, I will not kill you, and I will grant you something within my power. But if you fail, Lin Chuan cut him off with a bow. Then your majesty may take my life. Remember my words. Don't blame me if I leave no room for mercy when the time comes. Dugubo looked him over meaningfully. Lin Chuan met the threat with a confident smile. Bring Miss Dugu here, and I'll show you. Very well, Dugubo said. He was still wary. But you can't be allowed to leave. I need to leave something behind so you can't run. He grinned maliciously and lifted a finger. A shadow streaked out and coalesced into a small snake that lunged at Lin Chuan. It was no more than 5 inches long, nearly transparent, green, with bamboo-like bands across its body. Harmless looking, but a poisoned Douluo's first move was never simple. Lin Chuan didn't dodge. He let the little snake bite his palm. In an instant, the skin where it bit turned green and oily. Take this, Dugubo said, flinging a black pill across. This antidote will suppress the venom for 2 days. If you can't detoxify within that time, you'll be done for. Stay here until I return with Yan Yan, or try to detoxify yourself. Lin Chuan caught the pill but didn't swallow it. No need, your majesty. Just bring Miss Dugu quickly. Dugubo snorted and left the snake writhing back into his sleeve. Then he strode out of the valley, disappearing from Lin Chuan's senses in short order. Finally, Lin Chuan breathed, relief flooding him. He examined his palm. The green residue looked abhorrent to ordinary people, but he wasn't ordinary. Still, it was meant to intimidate. Dugubo must have thought the color would trap him here. Refine, Lin Chuan murmured and pressed a seal. Golden flames and earthen fire flared through his body. The venom that had merged into his blood met its nemesis and burned away, dissolving into nothing. The green on his arm faded, returning his skin to normal. Done, he said. The old poison is gone. Now let's see what secrets the yin-yang ice-fire eyes hold. With that, Lin Chuan slipped inside the valley, impatient to uncover what lay ahead. Chapter 59, Yin-Yang Eyes of Ice and Fire. Lin Chuan hurried into the valley. Before him lay a botanical paradise, and at its center, an oval hot spring steamed and shimmered. half vermilion, half milky white, the two halves sharply divided. One side radiated a heat like molten lava, the other exuded an icy chill like frozen mist. The two opposing breaths braided together in the air. When he inhaled, a burning, numbing pain crawled through his chest. It was a painful, unsettling sensation. This really is a treasure land, he muttered to himself, but not everyone can enjoy it. He slowed and let the golden flames and earthen fire coiled inside him flare up, resisting the eye's influence. The ice and fire eye was indeed a rare wonder, but it was dangerous to linger unprotected. Fortunately, his inner fires could withstand the opposing energies for now. Looking at the split spring, Lin Chuan's mouth curved. It does look like a hot pot, he thought, then shook his head at his own absurdity. He turned his attention to the surrounding growths. It truly was a sea of herbs, plants of every shape and color clustered together, each giving off strange, vibrant fluctuations of energy. For a moment, Lin Chuan was dazzled. There were star anise, black ice grass, fierce apricots, delicate greens, lovesickness red, and, to his surprise, an earth dragon golden melon nearby, its tuberous form resembling a sweet potato. Douluo had been sitting on a mountain of treasures without even knowing it. The earth dragon golden melon was especially valuable. Though primarily earth attributed, it contained a trace of dragon blood. It could counter snake venom backlash and might even trigger a martial soul evolution. If Douluo had known, he would have gone to great lengths to find it. It's better he doesn't know, Lin Chuan told himself with a faint smirk. If he did, I wouldn't be able to enjoy the ice and fire eye at all. Still, he didn't plan to pillage everything. The herb compendium in his alchemy notes matched these plants' appearances and effects. Some elixirs used them as prime ingredients. Lin Chuan wanted to study them properly and incorporate them into refined medicines, more potent and usable for more people than a single crude remedy. Besides, the truly rare herbs here were limited in quantity. A failed attempt would be tragic. It made more sense to stay and train his alchemy first, so he left the rare treasures alone. The plants wouldn't be going anywhere, and Douluo would return eventually. Besides, it would be a slap in the face to plunder the ice and fire eye while its host was away. There were still less precious, but far from common herbs to gather. Snow silkworms and cinnabar lotuses among them. While Douluo was absent, Lin Chuan quietly collected a number of those and stored them in his spirit storage. Then he set up his cauldron and began refining. He worked meticulously for 2 days, tempering and distilling. Each successful batch sharpened his fire control, polished his technique, and improved his medicine refining skill. When he finally closed his eyes to recover spirit power, 2 familiar auras flashed across his senses, fast and urgent. One was Douluo's, the other was Douluo's. "You're back so soon?" Lin Chuan thought, amused. Tiando City wasn't far from Sunset Forest, and someone with a title Douluo's speed could make the trip quickly. Maybe Douluo had hurried on purpose, or perhaps he'd simply come as soon as he could. Either way, the approach was rapid. The sound of wind burst through the trees, and 2 figures landed before him. Douluo's voice was light as he called out, and for a teasing moment he glanced at Lin Chuan's arm. But whatever amusement he'd felt evaporated at once. "You actually cured the poison?" he blurted, cold-eyed. Lin Chuan rolled up his sleeve and smiled easily. "Ah, Senior Douluo's little snake was indeed powerful. It took some effort, but I removed it." Douluo's expression soured. He clearly took offense at Lin Chuan's casual tone. Lin Chuan only smiled more inwardly. Beside Douluo, Douluo watched him with a scrutinizing gaze. "Senior Douluo, this must be your granddaughter, Miss Douluo?" Lin Chuan asked politely. "She's my Yanyan," Douluo replied with a nod, then frowned. "Didn't you say you'd met Yanyan before?" Lin Chuan explained softly. "I saw her a few years back, but only from a distance. She was hunting souls with the students of Tiando Academy. I didn't have a chance to speak with her." Douluo stepped forward, looking him up and down. There was a cool skepticism in her voice. "So you're the one Grandpa says can detoxify me?" Lin Chuan met her gaze. She was pretty, certainly handsome, but younger than he had imagined. Douluo's tone held doubt. Could someone so young really do what her grandfather couldn't? "Boy, when will we start?" Douluo asked impatiently. "I've brought her back. When do we do it?" "Whenever you're ready," Lin Chuan said. "All right, now," Douluo said. Lin Chuan produced a small porcelain bottle from his spirit storage and offered it to Du Guyan. The girl took it, opened the cork, and tipped a pill onto her fingertip. She examined it curiously, turning it over in the bright valley light. "This is the marrow cleansing pill I made," Lin Chuan said. "It washes out corrupted essence, cuts away the tainted marrow, reshapes the inner pathways, sometimes even enhances a person's aptitude. If Yanyan's condition is a congenital toxin from her mother's womb, this can force the poison out." Dugubo's face tightened with worry. He handled the pill, studied it closely, but saw no visible clues to its composition. His green pupils flickered with uncertainty. "If you're concerned," Lin Chuan added gently, "we can test it on a captured soul beast first. I have more than one marrow cleansing pill." "That would be wise." Dugubo hesitated only a moment. This was a matter of life and death. He wouldn't gamble recklessly. "Very well. Capture a soul beast and test it." Lin Chuan nodded and felt a quiet relief. He had prepared for this. He had the means and the patience to do things properly. Dugubo's cautious agreement was all the validation he needed. Chapter 60. Title Level Toolman. "Get! This Mandragora snake will do." Dugubo left in a hurry and returned almost immediately, holding a 1,000-year-old Mandragora snake as if it were a fledgling, light and easily cradled in his hand. Lin Chuan shrugged, pretending not to care. Dugubo didn't waste time. He pried the creature's mouth open, forced the marrow-cleansing pill Du Guyan had given him into it, and watched expectantly. The snake writhed almost at once. "You brat, you lied to me." Dugubo's expression darkened. A cold, murderous pressure rolled off him. Under that oppressive aura, Lin Chuan muttered, annoyed, "Senior Dugu, could you be a little less hasty?" Before Dubo could answer, the snake suddenly went slick and slid from his grasp in an instant. Only a shed skin remained in his hand. The real Mandragora flashed a vicious light in its eyes and lunged straight for Du Guyan. Quick as lightning, Lin Chuan pinched the snake's head. No matter how fiercely it struggled, it couldn't break free from his 5-finger mountain hold. "You little!" Dugubo's eyes widened. A 1,000-year Mandragora snake was a creature that could suppress a 3-ring soulmaster. Even if his granddaughter met one alone, it would take effort to subdue it. Yet this kid had done it without breaking a sweat. "How old are you, boy? What's your soul power level?" "That can wait, Senior Dugu. Isn't the point to test the medicine first?" Lin Chuan replied with a smile, steering the conversation back to the matter at hand. He produced an identical porcelain bottle. Dugubo watched, still uneasy about letting Du Guyan swallow the marrow-cleansing pill himself. But Du Guyan was resolute. "Grandpa, it's fine. I'll take the marrow-cleansing pill," she said. "You're decisive. Good for a girl," Lin Chuan crowed, then shot Dugubo a look that said, "See? Younger people aren't as timid as you old poison heads." Du Guyan gave him a playful warning. "If anything happens to me, you'd better bury Lin Chuan with me." Lin Chuan pretended not to hear that. Facing Dugubo's worried gaze, Du Guyan put the pill in her mouth and swallowed. "By the way, Senior Dugu, you should prepare some clean water. I might need it afterward." At that, Dugubo's worry intensified. Though grumpy and eccentric, he was devoted to his granddaughter. She was all he had left. He hurried to fetch water while Lin Chuan stepped aside. The pill began to take effect after a little while. Du Guyan's face flushed red, then purple, finally turning almost black. Grim to see, but her breathing stayed steady, a necessary part of the process. Time crawled forward. About half an hour later, she jerked awake, slapped the ground, and began to vomit. A dark, sticky liquid spilled out and pooled on the earth. The soil sizzled, green smoke rising with a vile stench. "Yanyan, how do you feel?" Dugubo asked, apparently unfazed by the smell and wholly focused on her. The coughing and retching subsided. Duguyan forced a smile and shook her head slowly. "I'm fine, Grandpa. I feel indescribably relieved. I think I'm level 40. Dugubo suppressed his surprise and checked her pulse and wrist with trembling hands. When his examination confirmed it, joy flooded his face. "Yanyan, all the poison in your body is gone." He had lived with a constant fear that his granddaughter might not live past 20. For years it dogged him. Now that fear evaporated. Tears shimmered in his eyes. "You're filthy and you stink. Go take a shower," Du Guyan said, mortified as she looked down. Black grime coated her skin. All right, I'll get the water," Dugubo said, flustered but eager. and hurried off to prepare it. After bathing and changing, Duguyan looked different, perhaps taller, her skin clearer, younger, more radiant. Both grandfather and grandson were visibly moved. Lin Chuan chuckled. "Senior Dugu, so I did tell the truth, didn't I?" Dugu Bo quickly composed himself, smoothing the emotion from his features and returning to his usual calm reserve. "I don't often say thank you. Boy, I will remember your help. If you ever need anything, come to me. I may not be the strongest among the titled Douluo, but I have some influence. I won't forget my promise." He meant it. Though Dugubo had a reputation among the titled Douluo as something of an embarrassment, he still carried clout. He could make enemies think twice. He kept his word. Lin Chuan felt a weight lift off his chest. "Thank you, Senior Dugu. I appreciate it. Actually, there is one thing I could use your help with." Dugubo's face brightened at once. "Tell me. Even if it means traveling to a dangerous place to hunt soul beasts, I won't hesitate." Lin Chuan smiled broadly. "I need a soul ring to break through." "No problem. Yan just made it to level 42. Let's go hunt for soul rings together," Dugubo said, already eager for the prospect.